Before we get into this video, I just want to say something quickly about the channel and why I'm putting this information out there. Behind the scenes, I've been deep into refining the Frankenstein mod, and there will be full videos on that coming out in the future. I know it's taken time, it's taken years actually, but it's not a simple process. But while working through all of this, I've also been perfecting the process of safely removing and reflowing the major BGA chips on these PS3 motherboards, the CPU, RSX and the EEGS. Now, one thing I've noticed when watching content online is that a lot of repair videos are really just there to showcase their services. They showcase successful results, they show that the technician knows what they're doing, but they don't really show how it's done. You rarely see full temperature windows, heat profile timings, or the mistakes and adjustments that happen along the way. So you end up watching something that looks impressive, but it's not really a tutorial. It doesn't give you enough information to actually try it yourself. I want this channel to be different. Yes, I do run a console repair and refurbishment business, and what I do from day to day, and that's what I do day to day, but the purpose of this channel isn't just promotion, it's education and documentation. I want to properly share the process, the temperatures, the success, the failures, and the refinements that go into getting reliable results on these boards. If you've got the technical ability, the right equipment and the patience to learn, then I actively encourage you to try this for yourself. The more people in the community who understand how the consoles actually work and how to repair them properly, the better. So in this video, I'm going to walk through the actual heat profile method I use to achieve full liquidus and safe chip lift on PS3. This has been tested across the CPU, RSX and the EEGS, and the most reliable approach that I've found. If your setup is similar to mine, this should give you a solid reference point you can work from and refine your own bench. Hello everybody, and today we've got a PS3 BGA removal demonstration for you. I try to go into as much detail as possible. If you go into the description, you'll see the exact steps that have been taken. And then obviously you can validate how it runs by watching this video. Alright, so in this video we're carrying on from the previous testing, and what I'm doing here is validating a fully reputable BGA removal profile for the PS3. Specifically on this board we're doing the CPU, but the exact same behaviour and temperature window also applies to the RSX and the EEGS. The goal here isn't just to remove the chip, it is to document a reliable control process that avoids unnecessary board stress and confirms true liquidus temperatures on these very thick motherboards. This board that you're seeing here is mounted on an AOYUE INT883 infrared preheater with the full bracket setup in place. I'm also using the ATIN ST862D hot air station on top with a nozzle that matches the footprint of the RSX and the CPU. And the EEGS for that matter. For lifting, I'm using a A0932 AO electric vacuum pump. Before any heat is applied, one of the most important things is making sure the board is completely level and stable. Even a slight tilt or uneven mounting can cause the board to flex as it heats, and that's where you run into delamination risk. So I've taken the time here to ensure that the mounting bracket is sitting flat and the board isn't rocking and everything is properly supported. Thermal monitoring is done through two thermal couples, one on the underside directly beneath the chip and one on top of the package. This gives me a real-time idea of what's happening through the thickness of the board, which is critical on PS3 motherboards because they absorb and retain heat very slowly. You'll notice that I don't apply flux at the very start, instead I wait until the board has already come up to temperature. Once you're in the roughly the 140 to 160 degree range, I introduce flux around all four sides of the chip. This heat naturally draws the flux underneath by capillary action, which gives a far better coverage than applying it cold. And yeah, don't apply it cold because you end up getting it all over the place when you start making small adjustments on thermal couples, etc. Yeah, it's just not good. So do it around about when you get to about the 140, 150 mark. in degrees that is. At this stage, we're in the long preheat phase. The bottom heater is doing most of the work, and because this setup uses a steel support bracket, that bracket acts as a major heatsink. It absorbs a lot of thermal energy and slows everything down, which means the ramp time is significantly longer than what you'd see on a bare board sitting directly on the IR plate. And yeah, it's important to note here that I'd rather have it on the bracket, so because that basically means that it keeps the board straight. The temptation is to take it off because you can do the whole process a lot quicker, but then you run into more DLAM risks. So I'd rather it take, in real time this took about an hour, but I'd rather it take an hour than, you know, get a board that has delamination. So once the underside starts reaching into the mid 160s and climbing towards 170 degrees, the top of the board is usually sitting somewhere around 110 to 130 degrees. That's exactly where we want it. At this point, we'll hold the temperature for a few minutes just to equalize the heat across the board and remove any thermal gradients. The stabilization phase is crucial. If you rush this at the start, pushing top heat too early, you end up stressing the board unevenly, and that's when you can get warping or internal separation. After the board is fully stabilized, I begin introducing top heat at a relatively low temperature and airflow, around 20% airflow initially. The idea here is not to shock the board, but to slowly bring it up to top and bottom temperatures in a controlled ramp, and I believe I start at 170 degrees here at 20% fan speed. I'll give a full guide actually in the description. From here on, everything is incremental, small adjustments, small increases, and constant monitoring of both thermal couples. You'll see that as we climb past the 200 degree range on the underside and the top approaches the low 200s, nothing appears to be happening yet. This is the stage where many people assume they've reached reflow, but in reality this is still only a heat soak. On thick PS3 boards, true liquidus happens much higher. And I think that's why it's really important to note here that you do need to preheat these boards for about 4 to 6 hours at least, because it basically removes moisture that can cause the popping, etc. from DLAM. So I continually gradually increasing both top heat and airflow in small increments. As we approach the mid 230s on both probes, we're getting close, but still not quite there. The chip will not float yet, it will still feel fixed in place. So yeah, as you can see, I'm basically very gradually getting there. I'm also using a timer to make sure that it's actually soaked at certain temperatures as well. And like I say, all of that will be in the guide. So all of this is completely normal. The key discovery from all of this testing is that true solder liquidus on these boards with a bracket setup occurs roughly in the mid 240 degree range on both top and bottom readings. Once we begin pushing into around 245 to 247 degrees on the top and roughly 242 to 245 on the underside, that's when everything changes. At this point, I will slowly increase airflow to around 25% to help carry just a bit more heat into this area. Okay, so basically that's where we come to test. So when it actually gets there on the video, you'll see that I use very gentle nudge on one corner of the chip. And I check for movement. You never force it, you just use the lightest of touches. If the solder is fully molten, the chip will slightly shift. Yeah? Or it'll feel like it's floating. That's the confirmation we're at full liquidus. And yeah, so basically a lot of people get confused. It will be like their heat station's on 350, 380, underside is at 250, and they may not be using thermal couples, a lot of these people. And that's, you know, they might have one for the top, but they may not have one for the bottom, and it's really important that you monitor everything because you want it all uniform. and they'll be very confused as to why it's not lifting. And that's when they'll ramp it up a lot, just to go, okay, I'm going to give it a lot more heat, and actually it doesn't need it, it just needs maybe a bit more airflow, and that's where DLAM can occur. So people just basically panicking, you just don't panic. If you pre-bake the board and you do everything in this manner, you're very safe. It's very unlikely you're going to get any errors. So something I also noticed, and you'll get when I actually start to lift it, I was actually concerned. I did hear one small pop, but actually that was later confirmed to be, you know, the actual the actual solder and the actual flux activity or minor underfill release, and not necessarily a sign of damage. What we're listening for is, you know, when we're listening for damage, is sharp cracks or aggressive popping, which would indicate board distress, but we didn't get that here. So yeah, you're going to see me just increase it, make sure everything's uniform. If you look closely at the temps there, you can see exactly where we are, and shortly I'm going to be just giving it a nudge. And I think what this process has confirmed is that the CPU, RSX and the EUGS all behave almost identically when it comes to true reflow and removal temperatures on these thick PS3 boards. Anything in the low 220 range is generally just a heat soak. True liquidus, where the solder actually becomes fully molten, is closer to the mid 240s in this setup. So yeah, this profile is now fully validated across all three major BGA chips on the PS3 using this equipment and this bracket configuration. It's slow controlled and most importantly repeatable. So yeah, I've tried it over and over. And yeah, here you can see that I'm now trying to nudge it, lift it. We're at the temperature, but it's still not going. So basically it nudged, and that what that basically was is the outer balls were melted, but the inner ones weren't. They were still hanging on. So if you find that, just calmly put the heat back on. Don't worry. You know, you can see I've actually got it quite high there. I see a lot of people a lot closer to the chip. It doesn't need to be. You can be 3 to 3.5 centimeters away on 20 to 25% airflow, just gradually heating that chip. And then when we're in this 245 plus range, that's when it's going to basically lift. And my pump eventually does. You're going to see me try again in a minute. We do actually get a lift. So yeah, just waiting for it to get back. I do nudge it again. We get the nudge, and yeah, I then lift it, and about the third time the pump actually does take it off. So it still wasn't there, but the heat that was generated there was trapped underneath, and eventually we did manage to get a lift there. So guys, thanks for watching this. I mean, I really hope that if anyone is trying to do the Frankie mod or wants to do a true reflow, that this guy can help you. So take care, and I'll see you in the next one.